Now we're out here in a fairly open valley. This valley system behind me hasn't been farmed, as far as we know, since the 50s. So a very long time, and early successional growth just really hasn't taken over much yet. So we've been waiting. And I think we could wait a lot longer because the soil fertility levels are low here. There's a lot of erosion problems. There's just not a lot of woody rootstock in the ground and seed bank that's going to actually transform this valley system into something special when it comes to deer and wildlife holding cover. At the same time, this area right here is a really good illustration for one of the most important deer bedding concepts that you can apply to whatever type of habitat you have anywhere a whitetail roams. And this concept, I've written about this concept and written a lot about it. But what you're doing is you're using different cover types to actually create cover within a monoculture system, whether that be hardwoods, open red cedar, field, open regeneration, early successional growth that's just not taking place, vast shrubland, whatever it might be, where you have that continuous type of cover that really represents a monoculture. Now, you look at switchgrass right here. This is planted solid. But you can see behind me, we have a lot of areas out in this field that are in goldenrod, ragweed, and forms of herbaceous plants that are early successional growth. I'm sure there's little bits of clover in here, alfalfa. There's giant thistle. There's a lot of different plant species in here and varieties that are growing, but they're just not amounting to much. A lot of those in broadleafs, in the form of broadleafs, represent food. What we're using the switchgrass for out here is we're using every point, flat spot, bench behind us. We're using the edges of the food plots that are down below, behind me, off to the side over here. We're surrounding those with switchgrass, and we're creating that cover so that when deer are in those food plots, they can't see out, we can't see in. At the same time, when we're up on this point, when we're past this bench over here, when we're on the other side of this line, deer can't see out, we can't see in. So we're taking this 10 to 12 acre area out here, and we're actually completely enclosing it in cover, that cover being in the form of switchgrass. Now let's transfer that into a large open hardwoods that you may have. You may have a similar feature where whether it's flat, semi-flat, or very hilly like we have here where the changes in elevation are up to 400 feet, you're taking hardwood cuttings where you need deer to bed, and you're cutting those bedding areas out in the form of 1-2 acre areas, maybe a half acre. You're creating those bedding pockets, hardwood regeneration, high stem count per acre. Now in that case, you might want to go in there and add some conifer to those cuttings. I usually add conifers at a rate of around 75 to 100 per acre in clumps of 2 to 5 scattered throughout that half acre, 1 acre opening. So you're changing the diversity by adding conifer. You have the hardwood regeneration and growth, so you're having food come in, briars come in, whatever it might be, so there's that daytime food. But ultimately, those pockets you're cutting within that hardwood are breaking apart that hardwood area, whether it's 10 acres or 40 acres, 80 acres, 100 acres, whatever it might be. You're breaking that area apart so that deer that are within there, within that location, they can't see past those cuttings. You can't see the deer within those cuttings, they can't see out. And you start to segment that entire area, and you make it so that deer can move throughout it. You increase the diversity, you're adding food, but most importantly, you're adding cover so that deer within that area, whether it's every 50 yards, every 100 yards, there's another patch of cuttings that break up that entire woods. Again, you can't see in, you can't see out. It's the same with red cedar. I've seen red cedar down in Missouri, southern Iowa, big, huge stands of red cedar, where people are actually removing the red cedar, trying to get it to take place and take shape into early successional growth. And really that red cedar is a valuable covering component, no different than the cedar, no different than the hardwood. You can go into the cedar, you can remove pockets of red cedar, use the cedar to actually create the cover, make sure the deer can't see in, and you know, you can't see them, they can't see you. But you're creating those pockets within the red cedar by removing the red cedar. I like to remove, in a case like that, especially with red cedar, you can remove up to 40 to 50, even 60% of that red cedar. Pockets within the inside, you're killing the red cedar growth that comes back. You're allowing any type of herbaceous growth to take place. You get hardwood regeneration, whatever root stocks in the ground will take shape. Might be in the form of ragweed, goldenrod, but especially briars too. But in that case, you're taking the same concepts as you would this open field. You're adding cover and you're segmenting the areas within so that deer can't see out, you can't see in, the deer in here are completely protected. Imagine in this field when this switchgrass right here is only a summer old. Next summer it's going to be right about here, it's going to be over my head. And so every deer on the backside of the switchgrass is completely safe. They can't see out, the stress level's low, but imagine the stress level that's reduced in this entire field right here, where deer can be right out in the middle of this valley and they're hidden behind these walls and lines of switchgrass, whether it's around the food plots, it's out on the benches that we've taken. There's 3 steps down we've planted switchgrass on down here or up on this point. These deer can get within these areas, no different than if they're getting within hardwood cuttings and a hardwood, stand of hardwood. In that hardwood regeneration, they're hidden within those pockets, and that's a really important concept. Now I'll simplify it even more. 5-acre woodlot surrounded by ag field for a half mile in any direction. You can go in there and make 30 deer beds on the inside. You can make little pockets of bedding, hinge cuts, whatever you want. But if those deer in the middle of that 5 acres can see out and look out across the ag fields for a quarter mile, it's not a bedding area. Even though you've done all that hardwood work on the inside, what you need to do is go out to the outside of that 5-acre cutting or that 5-acre woodlot, create hinge cuts all the way around it so you have a really solid low hinge cut wall where you can't see in, deer can't see out. Add grass, native grass, switchgrass around the outside. I've had clients have actually bermed it around the outside. But bottom line is that 5 acres is not a bedding area, it's not deer holding cover until you secure the outside so that deer are actually inside, can't see out, you can't see in. Then it becomes a bedding area regardless of what you've done to the cover on the inside. Now go in there and make some cuttings and actually make it attractive for wildlife and deer in general. This area right here, not a bedding area, not a low stress deer usage area, especially we just had a mountain bike course built right over on the neighbors here, so every time they're out here with their bikes they're going to spook deer off here, but not when the switchgrass comes in next summer. We actually had good timing by accident, making sure that we can protect the deer and hide the deer out here without even knowing they were going to do that next door. Now if they are, we're protected. So again, like in the case of the 5 acres, you're protecting that outside of that area, and then you're working on the inside so those deer can feel safe and lowering that stress level. We're doing the same out in this valley. You can do it the same within a stand of red cedar. You can do it the same within shrubs, changing the complexity, and you're changing the diversity at the same time. It's a great concept you can apply to anything you're working on, any type of cover that you have, any monoculture. And yeah, this is a solid stand of switchgrass up on this point. It represents a monoculture in this area, but it represents a form of bedding structure and cover that's not going to blow down in the wind. We're in January 24th. The switchgrass, young switchgrass, is still standing strong right here. It's getting buffeted by the northwest winds as we are right now. And it's a form of cover and structure that can be used to protect the deer within. No different than hinge cuts on the outside of the 5 acres, maintaining the red cedar, creating pockets within a stand of red cedar. And you're adding that structure, you're making sure deer can't see out, can't see in, and at the same time you're changing the diversity and the type of food and cover that's within that location too. Try it, you can apply it to any deer cover that you own and that you work on, and I think you'll see major changes this coming season if you start working on that early. We're out here in January right now, and start working on it right now. You can change your entire hunting season this coming fall.